Okay. So once he started talking about defective hadith, he went to talk about some cases that have particular issues. What is this defective hadith, by the way? He says, وَمَا بِعِلَّةٍ غُمُوضٍ أَوْ خَفَى مُعَلَّلٌ عِنْدَهُمْ قَدْ عُرِفَ. And anything that has a defect, an illah, that is obscure or hidden. And here, obscure, ghumud, and khafa, they have the same meaning here. So he's using two words for the same thing. Anything that has a defect that is obscure or hidden, mu'allal, it is defective. Indahumu, it's defective according to them, according to the scholars of hadith. And this dhamma right here, it gets extended as if there's a wow here. مُعَلَّلٌ عِنْدَهُمُ قَدْ عُرِفَ. This is for the poet to keep the beat. It is defective عِنْدَهُمْ, according to them, قَدْ عُرِفَ, and that's known. So that's known here, قَدْ عُرِفَ, that's filler to complete the line. So, yeah, that's filler to complete the line. And we said before that Hafiz ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, he said, rahimahullah, a better way to define the defective hadith is that it is a hadith that appears to be sound. It appears to be sound, but after research, it was found to have something that discredits the report. Something that discredits the report was found about the report, although it seemed to be sound. So that's the mu'allal defective hadith. Okay. Such a defect, how would it be discovered? It would be discovered by merging the different renditions of the hadith, comparing them. That's the scholar doing that, not the layman. And investigating these hadith, probing these hadiths. I mean here, thorough investigation. And then, when you find discrepancies, the scholar of hadith that is, when he finds discrepancies between the renditions, then he's going to see where did the discrepancy creep in. Because he's going to be looking, this one is narrated by someone with more memory, or this one is narrated by someone who is more accurate, or this one is narrated by greater numbers of narrators, as opposed to this version. This version over here seemed to be okay, but now we see that it's not. What might be wrong with it? Might be that really it's a report where a tabi'i attributes the hadith directly to the Prophet ﷺ. In reality, that's how it is. But the person who's giving the report actually filled the blank in. Somehow he filled the blank in. He put someone there between the tabi'i and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So there's defect here. Or maybe there is a report that is confirmed for the companions. It's mawquf, but the reporter is giving it to you as marfu', something attributed to the Prophet, or vice versa. Maybe there's a report attributed to the Prophet and the reporter is giving it to you as something attributed to a companion. These are just some different scenarios to show you, to give you an idea of the defects that exist in some hadith. And the defects, they exist in the text of the hadith sometimes, and they exist in the chains of the hadith sometimes. And you can see as I'm just scrolling through pages here that there's a lot of information I'm not reading. Because what we want to do right now is just pull the text apart to understand the bare minimum. Sometimes if there's too much explanation, you lose sight of the text itself, the limits of the text itself. So then after the author talked about the mu'allal, defective hadith, he talked about the muttarib hadith. Muttarib means clashing, commotion. Yani muttarib comes from the root letters dad, ra, ba, darb. So darb is hitting or striking. So the ittirab is the collision or the commotion or something like that. Yani the ittirab could be the ripple effect from the collision, the ripple that comes from the collision. Like if there were an ittirab in the army because the leader was killed. The leader was killed, and that caused great ittirab in the army. Is like ripple, ripples through the army. Yani has bad effect on them. So muttarib is clashing. So the muttarib has to do with contradictory reports. Contradictory reports. And any contradiction is coming from other than the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, never contradicts himself. Some scholars said there are not two authentic hadiths that contradict each other. Yeah, that's true. And that is true. There's no way there's two hadiths that are authentic and they contradict each other, but there never came from the Prophet any contradiction. Alayhi salatu wassalam. But sometimes the reporters, the many reporters who are reporting all these hadiths, sometimes they misunderstand, sometimes they assume, sometimes they forget, sometimes they're delusional. So some defects creep into some of the hadiths sometimes, then the scholars will discover them. Now, one type of defective hadith is one that's called muttarib. It's clashing report. The author says about it in his line of poetry here, وَذُو اخْتِلَافِ سَنَدٍ أَوْ مَتْنٍ وَذُو اخْتِلَافِ سَنَدٍ أَوْ مَتْنٍ مُضْطَرِبٌ عِنْدَ أُهَيْلِ الْفَنِّ وَذُو اخْتِلَافِ the one that has, yani the report that has ikhtilaf, difference, variance, yani non-compliance, inconsistency here, inconsistency. A hadith that has inconsistency, وَذُو اخْتِلَافِ سَنَدٍ أَوْ مَتْنٍ, a hadith that has inconsistency in chain or text, in the sanad, the chain, or the matn, the text. You know what sanad is, and you know what the matn, the text is. If you don't know, feel free to ask, please. You don't be shy, because you won't learn if you are shy. Then what is this? Mutaribun. It is clashing. Inda uhaylil fanni. According to the experts of the field. According to the experts of the field. So inda, according to uhayl. So this word uhayl, it comes from the word ahl. Ahl means people. So, عند أهيل الفن, according to the people of the craft. Now, the word uhayl, it is what someone might call diminutive form. Diminutive form. This means miniature, miniaturized form, shrinking, the shrinking form. Yani, for example, what if someone's name was Abid, slave? Then you might call him Rubaid, small slave. Or what if someone's name was Jannah. Then you might call her Junaina. Junaina, small garden. Jannah means garden. Junaina, small garden. So that's miniature form. That's how you would shrink something in words in Arabic. So Uhayl is miniature form of Ahl, as if to say the small people of the field, but doesn't mean small here. Here is a term of endearment. Endearment. It's like the beloved people of this field. وَذُو اخْتِلَافِ سَنَدٍ أَوْ مَتْنٍ, the report that has inconsistency in chain or text is clashing according to the beloved people of the craft. So what's meant here is that a report, one hadith that has various reports, not talking about different hadiths that have same meaning. Yani, sometimes you might have one hadith that has various reports, various renditions. And sometimes you have one meaning, a topic that has various hadiths, not one hadith that has various renditions, talking about one topic that has various hadiths. That means each one of these hadiths is not the same hadith, different hadith. So, A here, this is one hadith, same hadith, means same story, same incident, but different renditions, different versions, different reports of the same incident. And B here is not one hadith, but one meaning. Let's say, for example, had it been the issue of the torture of the grave, There's many hadiths that mention the torture of the grave. So it's not one hadith, it's many hadiths, different incidents with the same topic. That we're not talking about that now. B, what we're not talking about right now. One hadith with various meanings right now. One meaning with various hadiths. Right now, we are talking about one hadith with various reports. This is the one we're talking about. This is the one that might be muttarib or would be muttarib when these various reports are all clashing with each other in a way that we cannot put them together. Each one of them is different from the other. We cannot put them together, and we cannot deem one of them stronger than another. So that's called muttarib. So according to some, the hadith of the slave girl is muttarib, clashing. Because in the hadith of the slave girl, according to one rendition, or some renditions, she could speak. She was speaking. She can talk. According to some renditions, she was mute. And in some renditions, it was a woman who came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In some renditions, it was a man who came to the Prophet alaihi salatu wasallam. And in some renditions, it was that the slave woman was assaulted by her master, so he wanted to free her. Her master smacked her. Smacked by the master she was, because he felt that she was negligent. So, he smacked her in the face with an open hand. He smacked her, he slapped her. And then he felt bad for what he did, and he wanted to set her free. And according to some renditions, the man wanted to fulfill his mother's will. His mother left a will for a slave to be freed on her behalf. And in some renditions, the Prophet ﷺ asked her about the Shahada. And in some renditions, he asked her about a place. Place can mean status, though. When I say place here, I'm not saying necessarily literally a place. I'm saying, yeah, because the word place can mean status. The word place can mean location, and the word place can mean status. So he asked her about a place, which, if we put these two together, then we know that the place he was asking her about was a status, a position. He was asking her about a position, which is a status, not a location. But nevertheless, if we want to just take it by face value only, just face value, then in one version he asked her about the Shahada, or some versions he asked her about the Shahada, and in some versions he asked her about a place. And inshallah ta'ala, as we go through these, when we review, we'll see more examples. Because now I'm just giving you a light lesson, like I said to you, just unraveling the text here. And it's a review for me too, actually. So I'm not going hard here. But when we finally get, inshallah, to the end of this text, just the text alone, then we need to turn it up. Maybe we're going to read this explanation before we move on to another, before we move on to Al-Iraqi. And then we're going to see more examples. It's going to demand of me also to review more. May Allah enable me. Ameen. May Allah enable me to be prepared for all of my lessons. Ameen. So just to give you an idea about مضطرب. So that's مضطرب. وذو اختلاف سند أو متن مضطرب عند أهيل الفن. The one that has variance, inconsistency in chain or text is clashing according to the beloved ones, the endeared ones of this field. Now, the next type of hadith is called mudraj. Mudraj means inserted. The author says, وَالْمُدْرَجَاتُ فِي الْحَدِيثِ مَا أَتَتْ مِنْ بَعْضِ أَلْفَاظِ الرُّوَاةِ اتصلت. وَالْمُدْرَجَات, the insertions. The insertions into the hadith are ما أتت من بعض ألفاظ الرواة اتصلت, is what came from some of the wordings of the reporters and it connected, meaning connected to the hadith. So this means that someone's reporting a hadith and someone is taking hadith from him. So the reporter says some words before the hadith, then he says the hadith, and he says it in a way that the one who's taking it from him regards that the words that he's adding, or all the words he's saying, are the hadith. Put it that way. The recipient of this information, of this report, is taking all of these words as the hadith. So what is that then? We are saying it's a hadith that has in it some of the words of the reporter, not from the hadith originally. So that's what got inserted. The reporter's words got inserted. Whether they were inserted into the text of the hadith or they were inserted into the chain of the hadith, and where it might be inserted at the beginning of the hadith, might be inserted in the middle of the hadith, might be inserted at the end of the hadith. Mostly it will be at the end. The insertion mostly would occur at the end of the hadith. And could sometimes be in the midst of the hadith and would rarely be in the front of the hadith. And why would there be such insertion? How did this talk from the reporter get into the hadith? How was it construed to be part of the hadith? Because maybe the reporter was explaining a word. in the hadith. So he was saying the hadith, and there's a word in the hadith. So he wanted to explain the word. And the way he explained the word was he just, for example, he just said a synonym only. Like he didn't say, this word means, he didn't say something that's obvious that he's interjecting. Rather, he's saying the hadith. In the hadith, there's a word. Now, then this word, he wants to clarify for you what this word means. And what he does is he just says a synonym for that word. That's all. And then he keeps going. And he would say that in this hadith, there was kada wa kada wa kada. Kada wa kada. And then he continues. So this first kada, that's the word that's in the hadith. Then he says kada wa kada. That's his attempt to explain for you, what's this word? He inserted that there. And you're taking that from him, thinking all of it is the hadith. So sometimes it's because of explaining a word in the hadith. Or maybe it is the reporter, the one who's reporting the hadith, is extracting something from the hadith. In the process of reporting the words of the hadith, he extracts something out of it. He pulls something out of the hadith and he's speaking when he does that. So that what he is extracting out of the hadith in words becomes construed to be part of the hadith itself. And this could happen in other ways also. So that's the mudraj. Any question? So what are we doing here? We're just taking idea. We're taking the concepts here. And then the author says, وَمَا رَوَى كُلُّ قَرِينٍ عَنْ أَخِيهِ مُدَبَّجٌ فَعَرِفْهُ حَقًّا وَانْتَخِيهِ وما روى كل قرين عن أخيه مدبج فاعرفه حقا وانتخيه. Which means, and anything that, whatever any peer narrates from his brother, anything that a peer narrates from his brother. So who's the brother of a peer? His peer. The qareen here is the peer. The zamil. Qareen here means zamil. Peer. Yani qareen usually means associate. He means here peer. And the akh here, the brother, it means also the peer. So it means whenever the peer is narrating from the peer, then mudabbajun, that's mudabbaj. Wa'arifhu, so know it, haqqan, truly, wantakhih, and be proud. Yani, be proud of that knowledge. Be happy about it. Well, what does mudabbaj mean though? The mudabbaj comes from the dibaja. Dibaja. You see here the dal and the ba and the jeen. Those are your root letters. Those are the same letters in the word mudabbaj. You have here your dal and your ba and your jeen. So what's this dibaja? The dibaja is a cheek. Cheek. Like on your face, you have a cheek. So doesn't the face have two cheeks? Yeah, usually, unless you're deformed or something. You have two cheeks. So those two cheeks, they're like twins. They are peers. Those two cheeks are to each other peers. So the peer for the peer is like a cheek to a cheek. So this type of hadith is called mudabbaj. And what are we talking about? A peer narrating from a peer, as opposed to the peer narrating from his sheikh. Normally, how are you going to narrate? You're going to narrate from your sheikh, not from your peer. So, well, what if there were a sheikh? Here's sheikh. This sheikh has a tilmid, the student. He has also another tilmid, another student. So it's normal for the tilmid to narrate from his sheikh to someone else. And for the other tilmid also to narrate from his sheikh to someone else. But what happens when the sheikh teaches the tilmid and then the tilmid teaches his peer? And then the peer narrates from someone else to someone else. Then the peer narrates to someone else. This is called mudabbaj. The narration of peers. So that's when a tabi'i narrates from a tabi'i, like Abu Hurairah narrates from Aisha, or Aisha narrates from Abu Hurairah. They are peers here. The Sahabi, or a tabi'i narrates from a tabi'i. A Sahabi narrates from a Sahabi, or a tabi'i narrates from a tabi'i, or the likes. Any question there? That's simple enough. And then the next category, the author wants to start talking about names. Sometimes some people have the same name, or different names, same spelling. When we say same spelling in Arabic, it's going to be considered same spelling even if the harakat are different. So,
I have one question, Sheikh.
yes, please.
Can you go over the previous line of poem? والمدرجات في الحديث.
The mudraj.
Yes.
Yeah. Here, the author says, والمدرجات في الحديث ما أتت من بعض ألفاظ الرواة اتصلت. The mudrajat, the insertions, fil hadith, into a hadith, are ما أتت من بعض ألفاظ الرواة, what came from some of the words of the narrators. It truly is foreign to the hadith, not from the hadith, but got inserted into the report. It was thought to be part of the report and then was transmitted that way. It connected to the hadith. And there is, for your information, I'm glad you asked me here because I wanted to tell you, there is something like this in some of the reports of the Quran, some of the reports about the Quran itself. Because how was the Quran reported? Wasn't the Quran reported like hadiths are reported? Yes, it was. Meaning what? Meaning that the Quran is taken from sheikhs who have chains of narration for the Quran, and then you'll learn from your sheikh until you are ready to be a transmitter in that chain, and then you can transmit the Quran by your chain. So it's like a hadith in this regard. So that's why don't let a hadith denier get away with denying hadiths when he talks about why he should not accept a hadith, and he will tell you about the narrators and that they are fallible and this type of stuff. I'm going to say to him, the Quran that you claim that you want only is narrated in the same way. So what happened with the narration of the Quran? Also, through some routes of the Quran's transmission, some things like this got captured in the transmission. And then when the scholars discover these then that report of the Quran would be called shadh. Shadh. Irregular. There are some irregular recitations of the Quran. It's not permissible to recite them. Those irregular reports of Quran, they have in them idraj. That's one thing only, not only idraj. They have idraj in them, insertion, for the same reason. Like someone's reciting the Quran, and there's a word in the Quran, he wants to explain it for you. So he just says one word, like حافظوا على الصلوات والصلاة الوسطى. Here, والصلاة الوسطى, and the middle prayer. Observe the middle prayer. So maybe he will just say Salatul Asr. That's all he says. He doesn't say, this means Salatul Asr. He's just, yani, from his own perspective, it's clear, for example. That's why I didn't. Maybe if he realized that sounds like it's part of the recitation, he wouldn't have said it like that. So he would insert a word, which is a tafsir, actually. The tafsir is in there. And then who's taking it from him thinks it's part of the recitation. Also, those irregular recitations of the Quran, they have other issues too, such as abrogated verses. They might still have verses that have been abrogated, but yani was passed on as if it's not abrogated. So the scholars sifted through all these reports and they isolated 4 transmissions of the Quran. 4. They isolated 4 transmissions of the Quran that have irregularity in them, including idraj, insertion. Any other question?
How many recitations are not shadh?
There are 10 recitations that are confirmed. So it can be said there are 14 recitations. So subtract from those 14, 4. Then you're going to have 10. Then these 10, some said 7 of these 10 are mutawatir and 3 of them are sahih, less than tawatur, but definitely sahih. And these 3 that are definitely sahih, the scholars differed though if they're mutawatir or not. Some said no, they're all mutawatir. So it is said that there are 14 recitations of the Quran. So 4 of those recitations are irregular. It's not permissible to recite them in the prayer or out of the prayer as reciting the Quran. You don't recite those. So that leaves 10 recitations. So these 10 recitations, some said 7 of these 10 are mutawatir. And 3 of these 10 are just sahih, less than mutawatir though. But even these 3 that it said they're only sahih, some said no, in fact they are mutawatir. So there's 7 that are indisputably mutawatir. 7 that are indisputably mutawatir. And then 3 more that some deny are mutawatir and others confirm that they are mutawatir, but no one denies that they are sahih, authentic. And then there are 4 transmissions of the Quran that are irregular. Ameen wa feekum. And so the author says, muttafiqun lafzan wa khattan muttafiq. وضده فيما ذكرنا المفترق. So he says muttafiq. Muttafiq means compliant. Yani agreeing. Agreeing lafzan wa khattan, in expression, in pronunciation. Agreeing in pronunciation. Wa khattan, and script. Agreeing in pronunciation and script is called muttafiq, agreeing. وضده فيما ذكرنا المفترق. And وضده, so it looks like saying and its opposites. And I wonder how some who have translated Al-Bayquniyyah have translated this word here, وضده. Because might come to one's mind that وضده means its opposite. And ضد in this case means like. ضده أي مثله. وضده فيما ذكرنا المفترق. And like it. And what we have mentioned is al-muftariq, which is varying persons. So according to that, it would translate something like this. The compliant or the agreeing in pronunciation and yani, spelling, if you want, in pronunciation and spelling, the compliant in pronunciation and spelling is, or the agreeing, what agrees in pronunciation and spelling is agreeing. Yani, that's the type, it's called muttafiq, agreeing. And it's like, in what we have mentioned, is the varying persons. And then maybe you say, what that means. So what he wants to say is, there is a topic in hadith science. This topic concerns the names of the narrators. And it is the case when narrators have the same name, basically, same name. We're talking about people with the same name here. Different people with the same name. We are talking about different people with the same name. It's that simple. But it has categories. Different people with the same name. This has categories, though. And really, what the author is talking about here, the way the author said it would give you the impression that he's talking about two different things. And really, al-muttafiq wal-muftariq is one thing. And some scholars, they call it al-muttafiq wal-muftariq without a wow. See the wow in the title? Some of them say it without a wow. Al-muttafiq wal-muftariq. This is the name of this issue, which is different people with the same name. That's what it really boils down to. Different people with the same name, although it has categories. So, first of all, it should be obvious, I think, the benefit of such knowledge. Because when one knows the different people who have the same name, when someone knows, when the scholar knows the different narrators who have the same name, then this enables him to not mix things up, not to confuse things or conflate things, to be safe from thinking that several people are the same person. And sometimes knowing this knowledge of different people with the same names is more urgent. When would it be more urgent? When it has higher potential for confusion. When would it have higher potential for confusion? When the different people who have the same name are contemporaries living at the same time. And even peers taking from the same sheikhs. That's and or. So there's different cases of different people with the same name. Like those that their names and their father's names are the same. Like Al-Khalil ibn Ahmed. There's 6 or more men named Al-Khalil ibn Ahmed. So the hadith scholars, they know who these men are, their biographies, and other relevant information. And another case is that they have the same name and same father's name and same grandfather's name, like Ahmed ibn Ja'far ibn Hamadan. 4 men who were contemporaries having this name. Yani, their name is the same, and their father's name is the same, and their grandfather's name is the same. And like this, Yani, I don't now have to run through all the different types. Now you have an idea of this field that's in Mustalah, the field that addresses different people who have the same name. Same name means pronounced the same and spelled the same. Pronounced the name is pronounced the same and spelled the same. So that's exactly means same name. If it's not pronounced the same, if it's not spelled the same, then it's not really the same name. But there is another type that the author mentions here in the next line when he says, مؤتلف متفق الخط فقط وضده مختلف فاخشى الغلط. It means مؤتلف yani harmonious. That means compliant, going together. The harmonious is متفق الخط فقط. That which has the same spelling. That which has the same spelling. But you need to know. But you need to know that when they say same spelling here, they only mean the shape of the letters. They don't mean the dots. They don't mean the harakat. And they don't mean shadda. So when it comes to what we are calling here same spelling, then think about it like the old Arabic before dots and vowel slashes were invented. Then it's going to be spelled the same. Some group of shapes, some shapes of letters that can be pronounced in various ways because they had not yet invented dots. So, مؤتلف متفق الخط فقط. The harmonious is that which has the same spelling only. وضده مختلف, and what's like it, also same thing, what's like it is مختلف, yani is different, yani different pronunciation. مختلف, different pronunciation. Same spelling, different pronunciation. فخشى الغلط, so fear, blunder, fear, blunder. So then, the same thing like the previous line. The author's wording would give you the impression that he's talking about 2 different kinds of hadiths here. While he's not talking about 2 different things, he's talking about one thing. Al-mu'talif wal-mukhtalif. Same spelling, different pronunciation. The case of same spelling and different pronunciation, meaning we're talking about names here. Now, there's also different kinds for this one. One kind is too abundant to quantify. It means there's some names that you can't guess what they are. You cannot guess what they are. Or instead of using the word guess, you cannot, even if I put the word educated, you cannot make an educated guess about what the name is. This means, you cannot deduce the name. You can't deduce it. Such as someone, such as the name Usaid, versus the name Asid. Usaid versus Asid. So here, when we said spelled the same, means just the shapes of the letters. You have alif, sin, ya, dal. Also alif, sin, ya, dal. That's what's meant by spelled the same here, but pronounced differently because we have a dhamma on the first letter for the first word and a hamza on the first letter of the second word. And the first one has fatha on the second letter, second one has kasra on the second letter. They both have sukoon on the third letter. And so one of them is usaid. So if we spell it in English letters, no problem. And the other one is asid. The Arabic spelled the same. So had this been present without any vowels, then you can see it looks exactly the same. So what if you are reading the book and then this name comes? So what are you going to do? Say, maybe it's Usaid. Let's just say Usaid. You don't know. There's too many instances of either one for you to be sure which one it is. So you need to take it. You need to have a reference. And another example here, he says, Hibban, and Hayyan, and Jayyan. So you see the first one, first letter is a ha, and the first and second one, first letter is a ha. Yes?
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I just had a question. Like, without the dots, how would they read that at that time? Like Usaid and Asid.
So they're going to know.
How would they know? Because there's no dots.
They're going to know.
Subhanallah.
MashaAllah. They have enough Arabic to know. Process of elimination. Because what else going to go there? What else can go there is a bat. I mean a noon or a bat or a tat or a that. So they're going to know. Because this shape here in the middle is one of 5 letters. Either bat or noon or that or yeah or that. Over here is another example, Hibban and Hayyan and Jayyan. For the first two, they both start with a ha. But for the third one, starts with a jim and it's considered same spelling. Also, the first two, although both the first two start with a ha, but the first one has a kasra and the second one has fatha, still counted as same spelling. And likewise here, second letter for these words is a bat in the first one. And it's a ya in the second and third one. Still counting though as same spelling. And there's another case here, which is a case that you can deduce. Same spelling, different pronunciation, and you're able to deduce it because it's quantified. Yani, limited cases. So you're able to do process of elimination. Like to say, in all of the book, in all of Al-Bukhari and Muslim, and out of all the names in Al-Bukhari and Muslim, no one has this name but so many men. No one has this name but kada min ar-rijal. Only so many people have this name. So then you would be able to know because it's quantified. I don't have an example here more than this, what I just supposed to you. And they have some examples such as such as a name. There's a name amongst the narrators, which is Salam with the shadda on the lam. But there are some people named Salam without a shadda on the lam. Most of the time it's Salam with a shadda. So the instances of Salam without a shadda are way fewer. So they were able to quantify it and know when is it without a shadda. Those scholars who studied, they would know all the cases of Salam without a shadda. So then, because they are able to quantify that, then they can know which way it goes. And that's all we're going to mention now for how these scholars have to deal with names of narrators. And again, let these two cases be examples for you of how thoroughly these scholars have sifted through all of these reports. The scholars did not leave any stone unturned. And no one should be shaken by the obstinance and arrogance of hadith deniers. At the end of the day, they just simply don't want the hadiths. For some reason, they want to be able to call themselves Muslims without taking the hadiths. And they want to affiliate with the Quran without taking the hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ. And by extension, without taking from the scholars too. They want to be able to call themselves Muslims, and they want to be able to affiliate with the Quran and nothing more. So they are deviated people. Our religion has components that make it whole. And amongst those components is the hadiths. And amongst those components is the scholars. And that's why in the Quran, Allah says, وَمَا آتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ. Whatever the messenger gave you, then take it. And also in the Quran, Allah says, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. Those who fear Allah amongst his slaves are the scholars. These are essential elements for the cohesion of our religion. And not merely the Quran. The Quran is the main piece. Any question? Okay. So moving right along then to the next hadith type, we have what the author said here, وَالْمُنْكَرُ الْفَرْدُ بِهِ رَاوٍ غَدًا تَعْدِيلُهُ لَا يَحْمِلُ التَّفَرُّدَ. وَالْمُنْكَرُ الْفَرْدُ بِهِ رَاوٍ غَدًا تَعْدِيلُهُ لَا يَحْمِلُ التَّفَرُّدَ. He says, the munkar, the objectionable, or the rejected. Let's not say rejected here. We'll say objectionable for now. Munkar. Yeah, we'll leave it like that for now. If I think of another word that I find nicer, I'll share it with you, inshallah. The author says it's a fard report. Remember, there's a type of hadith called fard. Fard is what is narrated by a lone narrator. Fard narration is narrated by a lone reporter. So that means it's a type of fard report. According to the author here, a type of fard report. A type of unique report. What? It gives it its own category. به راو غدا تعديله لا يحمل تفردا. Its a narration, a unique narration, and a narration from a sole narrator whose accreditation, his accreditation maybe means what people say these days, his accolades do not support his loneliness. Yani, he's not strong enough to be a single narrator. He's not strong enough to be the only one who narrated this. We don't want to take it from him if nobody else narrated it. Maybe someone else narrated it, and then we can feel okay that he's one of the narrators. But if he's the only one who narrated it, then that's not good enough for us. So that's important kind there. Someone that you don't want to take it from him only. Did anyone else narrate it? Does he have a supporting narration, a shahid? So that's how the author defined it. But some scholars defined it another way. They said, nah, the munkar actually is like the shadh hadith. What's shadh? Shadh is when you have a hadith, as you know already, we reviewed it last week. Shadh is when you have a narration that by itself appears to be fine. Fine, I mean, it appears to be sahih. Not just fine, authentic. There's nothing apparently wrong with this hadith. It was only because we compared it to another authentic narration, rather a more authentic narration, that it became clear for us that this one has something wrong with it. And so it's not really sahih, rather it is irregular. And so it's truly weak, but we didn't discover its actual blunder other than the fact that it's contrary to something more reliable. Some scholars, they said munkar is like that, but the difference is that a munkar hadith is one that is fundamentally weak already. Not that looks like it's strong, but it's contradicting something stronger. It's weak, and it's contradicting something stronger. So, if you take it this way, then you're going to say, when you have a shadh report, irregular, this is the one that looked like it was authentic, but it wasn't. Then the other one, the one that we accepted, is going to be called mahfuz. Mahfuz, this means preserved. So a hadith that's called mahfuz, hadithun mahfuz, preserved hadith, this will mean that there's another hadith compared to this one that was beat out by this one. When you say there's a shadh hadith, that means you're saying there's another hadith compared to this one that beat this one. Although this one appears to be authentic. That part's important. Although this one appears to be authentic. So here I have this arrow here. What should be here is these are the ones that are contrary to each other. What's contrary to a shadh hadith is mahfuz hadith. What's on the other side of an irregular hadith? A preserved hadith. What's on the other side of a preserved hadith? An irregular one. Okay. So like that, the munkar hadith is objectionable. I'm still looking for another word. So what's contrary to this one is called ma'ruf. Ma'ruf means Compliant. Compliant. So, on one end, you have a hadith that's fundamentally weak, and we don't want it from that narrator alone. Yani, it's weak. And we found this weak hadith contrary to another hadith that's not weak. So which one are we going to take? Of course, we're going to take the one that's not weak. That one that's not weak, that's the compliance one, al-ma'ruf. I mean, you might say known. That's the familiar one. This is what's familiar or compliant. Yani, maybe we can translate these as, and this actually could work here. Munkar could mean alien. This is the alien one. As opposed to the ma'ruf. Ma'ruf is the familiar one. This hadith is alien. The other one is familiar. Alien means foreign. Unknown, unusual. And we're going to see some examples of that, insha'Allah ta'ala. But not before we see another type of hadith called al-matruk. Matruk is abandoned. Yani, this one is unwanted. Yani, left alone. Matruk. The author says, Matrukuhu ma wahidun bihin farad wa ajma'u li da'fihi fahuwa karad. متروكه ما واحد به انفرد وأجمع لضعفه فهو كرد. It means the abandoned type of hadith is the one in which someone uniquely narrated it while the scholars have a consensus that he is weak. And so it is like rejected. It's like it's rejected. It's like it's rejected. What does that mean? It's like it's rejected. Meaning it's like they treat it like it's a lie. They're not saying it's a lie though, but they treat it like it is. It's what you're going to do sometimes. Maybe someone's not lying to you. You're going to treat him like what he's saying is a lie, though. Subhanallah. Don't take it for granted that someone should believe what you say. So why are they like this here for this type of hadith? Because this narrator that they agreed that he's weak, ajma'u li dafihi, they agreed he's weak because he's a liar. Even if he's not known to be a liar about a hadith, even though he's not known to be a fabricator, let me say, a hadith fabricator, but he is a known liar. And therefore, we're not taking from him. Not only that, though, it's not only that he's a known liar, but the hadith also that he's reporting has in it a massive blunder. Something not right. Yani, something against the rules of the religion. So not only has in it something against the rules of the religion, it also is coming from a known liar. Even if he's not a confirmed hadith fabricator, then these scholars will reject this hadith. So that's another word if you want. Matruk is rejected hadith. Fahuwa karad. It's like rejected. It is rejected. But it is not quite at the level of being fabricated. But you can see the progression here of what you call going down the drain. Because we said that there is a hadith. We said that there's a hadith called Munkar. This one, this alien hadith, unfamiliar. We're going down the drain from here. Then we said there's one called Matruk. abandoned, unwanted hadith. It's going further down the drain, and then eventually you're going to come to the mawdu', fabricated hadith. Yani bottom of the barrel. Down the bottom of the trash can where the maggots are. Mawdu', fabricated. That's the worst. And that's the last kind that the author mentioned. He said, وَالْكَذِبُ الْمُخْتَلَقُ الْمَصْنُوعُ عَلَى النَّبِي فَذَلِكَ الْمَوْضُوعُ. The lie, the fabrication, the manufactured hadith. The hadith manufactured against the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The lie, the fib told on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. فَذَلِكَ الْمَوْضُوعُ. That's the fabricated hadith. This is the worst kind of hadith. It's not even a hadith really. The mawdu' is not really a hadith, but we can call it a hadith under the guise of what its fabricator claimed it to be. And that's normal. When you call something by the name of what it is not truly because of what it's supposed to be, what it is supposed to be. So that's why you might say, this marriage between gay people is not valid. So it's not a marriage. When you called it a marriage, though, that doesn't mean that you believe it's a marriage, because what you're really saying is this what they call marriage is not valid. This so-called supposed marriage is not valid. So when we say fabricated hadith, we're saying this supposed hadith is fabricated. It's a fabrication. And like that, you might do other things. Also, what's like that? Mut'ah. Mut'ah marriage is not a marriage. It's not a real marriage. It really is a prostitution deal. Mut'ah really is a prostitution agreement. It's not a real marriage. He's renting her, which is not valid. And some other things like that. You said, so we can use the term marriage without using adatul hikayah? Yeah, you can. This is normal. Yeah, like when those two gay people so-called get married. Yeah, you don't have to say so-called, for example. You don't have to say the marriage, they say, you know what that's also like? What did Prophet Musa say to Musa Samiri? Didn't he say to him, Unzur ila ilahi, look at your God, which was the calf that they worshipped. So he didn't say, look at your so-called God, or look at your God, qad you call. You said that's with idafa. Yeah, I don't know that the idafa makes the fact that it's idafa here makes the difference. And that the reason why it's not haram is because it is put forth with dispraise and rejection. Yeah, that's what I learned. Yes. It's when Musa said, Unzur ila ilahik, why there's no problem here? There's no problem here because he is disagreeing and dispraising. لا يتفق ولا يؤمن بذلك لا يعتقد صحة هذا يعني أطلقه من غير أن يعتقد أن الاسم يطلق عليه حقيقة. You said so we can use it in the same context. Yes, this is normal. That's why I said it's normal. It's something a person can do without being afraid. Yeah, people are going to just talk like that. That's like part of language. It's a itlaq. It's a type of itlaq. يعني تسمية الشيء بما يعني لا أدري. I don't know what they might call it. You know how they say تسمية الشيء من باب كذا. تسمية الشيء من باب كذا. There's so many ways to name something. Maybe, for example, you saw someone's head only, just his head, not his whole body. So then you'd say, I saw Fulan. Why you don't say, I saw the head of Fulan? And you said, I saw Fulan, because now you're naming him. You're naming all of him by some of him. In this case, you are naming a thing by what it's supposed to be. Yeah, tasmiyatul kulli bil juz'. Yes, this one I don't know how to phrase it here. Because of the idafa, I don't recall learning anything about the idafa here. I'll review insha'Allah ta'ala. Yes. No, I fahimtu. Ain al-idafa fahimtu. I just don't recall that I heard that it's the idafa that made it. Yeah. But when you put it that way, because what are your options? You're not going to say unzur ilal ilah. Definitely not going to say that. And would you say unzur ila ilah? Just nakira. Doesn't seem right to me. So let's review that, investigate that, insha'Allah ta'ala, and we can get the words here properly. But anyway, yeah, it's not haram to call a fabricated hadith a hadith, yani, with the meaning that you're making it clear that you're deeming it fabricated, you don't accept. So we'll be, for example, talking about the fabricated hadith of Jabir. Like when we start the lesson, we're going to say, now we're going to talk about the fabricated hadith of Jabir. This hadith, etc., etc., etc. From there, there's no sin. Now here, we could talk about the things that motivate a fabricator. What motivates a fabricator? Yani, I could mention for you, like, for example, he hates the religion. Or, for example, he's a storyteller and he gets paid. He's a paid storyteller. So therefore he fabricates, yani he's embellishing. Or, for example, he thinks it's a good idea if he just fabricates something to encourage you. So in his mind, he's an encourager. And really, he's a fool. He's a moron. In his own mind, he's an encourager. Or he's a bigot. He's a bigot who wants to support his own madhab. So the best thing he could do to support his madhab is to lie. So those are some of the things that would motivate fabrication. And then there's also ways the scholars discover the fabrication. And also there's some other talk here about the scholars, and this is important here actually. Yani, the scholars will deem a fabricated hadith a fabrication by being confident that it is. It's enough for them to be confident that it's fabricated. So, confidence is less than knowledge. Confidence is less than knowledge. They would be confident that a hadith is fabricated, then they're going to accuse its narrator of being a fabricator. So when they're confident means there's room for error, maybe they're wrong, possibly they're going to disregard this room for error here and go by what they're confident about. We'll come back to talk about that, insha'Allah ta'ala. But how about we finish the metin here, because we're right at the end. The author says, may Allah have mercy on him, we have benefited from his poetry a lot here. Even though we had some criticism, we still, yani, he, lahu alayna fadl. He still lahu alayna fadl. Now we benefited from his knowledge and we benefited from his poem, despite some criticisms here and there. And he ended his poem, he said, وقد أتت كالجوهر المكنون سميتها منظومة البيكوني فوق 30 ب4 أتت أقسامها تمت بخير ختمت. He says, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy on him. It has come like hidden gem, like a hidden gem, a gem that was hidden away. So it's so nice and clean and shiny and new and precious. He says, سميتها منظومة البيقوني. I called this poem the Bayquni poem, or the poem of Al-Bayquni. Some people say the ode, O-D-E, the ode to Al-Bayquni, or the Bayquni ode, or something like that. Some people say. He said, more than 30, by 4 they came. What came? Aqsamuha, atat aqsamuha. More than 30, by 4 came its divisions, the divisions of the hadiths mentioned in this poem. Tammat bi khayrin. And it was complete with goodness, khutimat, and sealed. The end. And who is this Bayquni? The explainer of this Bayquni poem, who is Az-Zurqani. All these words that are not in bold, these are the words of Az-Zurqani, a Maliki. He says, لم أقف له على اسم ولا ترجمة ولا ما هو منسوب إليه. I did not find his name. I didn't find the name of this poet, this author. And I did not find any biography documented about him. And I didn't find anything else attributed to him. So somehow, if it's like that, if he's not the only one who didn't find any information about this author, then somehow, Allah gave this sheikh who authored this poem the merit of his work getting out and spreading amongst the Muslims without anybody knowing who he is. And the Muslims accepted it and spread it. MashaAllah. Wallahu alam. Allah knows best. Now we have completed the poem.